On their wedding anniversary, Ethan accompanied his childhood sweetheart Luna to watch the fireworks display. Luna posted on Facebook to show off, "Thank you for remembering our agreement." The picture attached was the back view of her and Ethan cuddling closely. Then, Ethan forwarded this Facebook post and added, "Some regrets must always be made up." He knew I would see it, and it was a naked provocation. I sneered, and sent a screenshot of Ethan's forwarded message to my Facebook, @ing a bunch of acquaintances. "Ethan, get back here in half an hour. Otherwise, the baby in the garage will be as gorgeous as the fireworks tonight." Then attached a photo of me having a candlelight dinner alone. Soon his phone rang. "Joanna, what are you crazy about?" I tapped the table nonchalantly. "You have 27 minutes and 32 seconds. I just finished talking to my brother when Ethan called me." Listening to his angry voice, I was actually very calm. "You, don't go too far. I promised Luna a long time ago. This is the agreement we made when we were kids." 27 minutes and 19 seconds. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. "I'll be right back." About half an hour later, Ethan came in with a smoky air and the scent of Luna's usual gardenia perfume. He saw me sitting quietly at the dining table, slowly wiping the corners of my mouth with a napkin, his brow subconsciously furrowed, and his tone was filled with impatience at being disturbed by me and habitual perfunctory. "Why did you call me back? Didn't you say that Luna and I?" I had no interest in listening to his nonsense, so I stood up and walked to him. On his wrist was the Patek Philippe watch I spent nearly 10 million yuan on last year, with our initials engraved on the back of the dial. Now it seemed like a joke. I raised my hand, took off the watch in his astonished eyes, and threw it hard at his feet. The dial and parts shattered to the ground. Ethan's face turned pale instantly, and he looked at me in shock and anger. "Ethan, this is just a small reminder for you. Don't forget where you got everything you have now. Joanna, have you fucking had enough?" Ethan's eyes were wide open and he raised his hand as if to hit me. "Not enough." I tore off the tablecloth, threw the cups and plates on the table in front of him, and looked at him coldly. "Did I tell you my brother is coming today? You just want to watch some fireworks with Luna, and you dare not take my brother seriously." "Your brother, he hasn't come yet." He choked suddenly, his eyes flickered, and he pretended to be calm. I sneered and looked at him with contempt. "Do you think my brother has the time to wait for a piece of crap?" His face turned pale and he didn't dare to say a word. My marriage to Ethan is a traditional business marriage, and our two families work closely together. After my father passed away, my brother took my mother overseas, and Ethan probably felt that no one in the Jiang family could suppress him. At the end of last year, he actually brought his childhood sweetheart Luna home and moved directly into the second bedroom. He thought I didn't know what he was doing outside, but he brought her right under my nose and flirted with my man every day. This is just shitting on my head. I threw a cup of hot coffee on Ethan's face and said, "Throw the garbage out, or this villa will be burned down and rebuilt." Ethan's face was burned and he stayed out for most of the month, not even attending the New Year's Eve family dinner. This time, too, we fell into a cold war for the next few days. He probably thought I was a pushover and still didn't learn his lesson. At the family dinner at the end of the month, Ethan walked in holding Luna's hand. The Chin family dinner is an important occasion, and as the daughter-in-law of the Chin family and the daughter of the Jiang family, I have always been the perfect hostess. But this time Ethan blatantly broke the rules. Luna was wearing a plain white dress and delicate light makeup, looking weak and innocent. She held Ethan's arm affectionately, and greeted Ethan's parents sweetly as soon as she entered the door. "Hello, Uncle and Aunt, sorry to bother you," Ethan said. "There's a family dinner today, and he insisted on bringing me here to introduce myself." She glanced at me provocatively. Ethan's parents looked embarrassed, and Ethan's mother tried to smooth things over. "Luna is here, sit inside." Luna didn't move. She turned to me and smiled even sweeter. "Sister Joanna, don't be angry. Ethan brought me here because he felt sorry for me being alone. Ethan and I grew up together and have a special relationship. My uncle and aunt have always liked me. She hugged Ethan's arm tightly, unable to hide the pride in her eyes. Ethan glanced at me and said impatiently, "Joanna, Luna is just here for a meal, don't put on that deadpan face, as if someone owes you something. Don't forget, this is the Chen family, not your Jiang family. Put away your spoiled brat temper." I almost laughed out loud. Without my Jiang family, your Chen family would still be rolling in the mud. The looks of the uncles and aunts around me kept reminding me that if Luna's father hadn't been in trouble, Ethan would have really broken off the engagement and married her. The Chen family thought they had kept the secret well, but how could there be any secrets in this circle? But Ethan said I have a temper like a spoiled brat, and I really do. I picked up the soup bowl in front of me, took a sip, and then slammed it heavily on the mahogany dining table. Instantly, everyone's eyes were focused on me. I wiped the corners of my mouth and raised my eyes, not looking at Luna, but looking directly at Ethan's parents who were sitting in the main seat. "Dad, Mom, can I ask you something? What is the identity of Miss Bai who appeared at our Chen family dinner? Her appearance here today, does it mean that the marriage between our Jiang family and the Chen family has become less important in your eyes?" Ethan's father's face completely sank, and Ethan's mother's face also froze. Ethan was about to speak up to defend Luna, but was interrupted by a lazy voice. "Brother, you are so ignorant." The person who spoke was Ethan's younger brother Zach. He had a strange personality and we had never interacted with each other. I didn't expect him to speak for me. Zach held the wine glass and glanced at Luna, with a mocking smile on his face. "TSK, look at how affectionate you are. If you don't know, you would think you brought her back specially to get married and find me a new sister-in-law." As soon as these words came out, the relatives around began to whisper, looking at Luna with eyes full of scrutiny and contempt. Luna's face turned pale, her eyes immediately turned red, and she looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. "That's enough. Zach, what nonsense are you talking about?" Ethan shouted. Zach took a sip of wine slowly. "What nonsense am I talking about? Isn't everyone in Jiangqing aware of your affair?" Luna swayed, leaned against Ethan and wiped her eyes pitifully. "Sister Joanna, I've always envied you. You're not like me, my family is in trouble and I have to trouble Ethan." She paused and added softly, "If uncle and aunt knew that you are living so well now, they would definitely be relieved, right?" The anger in my heart suddenly exploded. I stood up suddenly, walked to her, and slapped her twice. Luna was stunned, covering her instantly swollen cheeks, looking at me in disbelief. I looked at her coldly. "Who do you think you are? How dare you mention my parents?" Ethan stood up with a look of shock and anger. "Joanna, you dare to move?" I turned to him and froze him in place with a look. Luna fell into Ethan's arms, crying. "Ethan, I didn't mean it. I just care about Sister Joanna." Ethan hugged her and glared at me with both heartache and anger. I took out a handkerchief and wiped my hands, then looked at my in-laws sarcastically. "Dad, Mom, you saw it too. If Ethan and Luna are innocent childhood sweethearts, then I'll accept it even if I have to hold my nose." I pointed at them, my tone firm. But they both dared to disgust me so blatantly at the Chen family dinner. I don't think I'm that magnanimous. If she came to the table to eat today, I would leave immediately. The living room was dead silent. Ethan's father's face was livid, and his voice was filled with suppressed anger. "Joanna, be aware of your identity. Hitting someone is disgraceful." Of course I remember my identity. I am the Chen family's legitimate daughter-in-law. I met my father-in-law's gaze without fear. "Dad, do you think it is respectable for the Chen family to watch your son hugging and kissing other women at a family dinner?" At this time, Luna sobbed. "I'm sorry, Uncle and Aunt, Sister Joanna. It's all my fault, I shouldn't have disturbed you." She covered her face, as if she had suffered a great injustice, turned around and rushed out crying. "Luna!" Ethan immediately shouted nervously, glared at me fiercely, then left the table full of relatives and embarrassed parents, and ran out after Luna without looking back. Ethan's father was so angry that he was shaking all over. He slammed the table and said, "Asshole. Ethan's mother also forced a smile and said to me awkwardly, "Joanna, don't take it personally, Ethan." I interrupted her calmly, "Mom, I'm fine. Let's eat, the food is getting cold." Zach looked at me deeply, and I responded with an indifferent smile. That night, Ethan did not come back. After the family dinner ended unpleasantly, Ethan moved directly to Luna's place. How did I know this? Of course, Luna's Facebook was updated every day with her and Ethan's daily love. Ethan personally cooked a loving breakfast for me. Working overtime with Ethan was hard, but very happy. Ethan took me to meet a very important client. He said I was his lucky star. There is always a photo of him looking up at the camera lovingly in every post. Ethan even brought her to important business social occasions and let her strut like a hostess. Ethan enjoyed the feeling of being in control and embarrassing me. He probably thought that as long as Luna kept putting pressure on me, I would eventually swallow my anger like before, for the sake of the dignity of the family marriage and to maintain superficial peace. He didn't know me well enough. Or, he overestimated himself. I was still having a spa treatment at the beauty salon when my best friend Sophie called me. When she heard about this, she was even more upset than I was. "Joanna, that pair of dogs are getting too arrogant, and you're just going to put up with it? If you're not comfortable taking action, tell me and I'll get someone to break that bitch's leg." I comforted her, "Sophie, don't be impulsive. I will handle this matter myself. I know my limits." "What limits do you have? You are just too tolerant." Sophie was disappointed. "Nathan has already said that as long as you ask, he can make Zhang's group suffer at any time." Sophie's husband Nathan was born in Jiangqing, a Gu family. He usually behaves low-key, but he is a person who cannot be underestimated. He loves Sophie very much. I naturally knew the weight of her words, so I thanked her with a smile, but I still had to earn back my own face. However, I didn't expect that Sophie's sense of justice would soon push the whole incident to an irreversible situation in a way that I could not expect. Half a month later, Ethan once again attended the charity gala with Luna in a high-profile manner. Luna wore an expensive custom-made dress and held Ethan's arm intimately, just like a wife. Sophie and I were also invited to attend. Sophie was so angry when she saw Luna's smug look that her face turned green. If I hadn't held her back, she would have rushed over right away. "Joanna, look at her. I really want to tear her fake face apart." Sophie stamped her feet in anger. I patted her hands, signaling her to calm down. I had other plans tonight and didn't intend to confront her head-on. However, before I could finish my work, Luna came up to me. I just finished talking to an old friend and when I turned around, Luna bumped into me. Ah. The red wine in her hand just happened to spill on her light-colored dress. The next second, her eyes were red, and she looked at me in disbelief and incomparable grievance. "Ms. Joanna, I know you don't like me, but how could you push me in public? This skirt." Before I could say anything, she turned to Ethan, who had a gloomy expression behind her. "Ethan, don't be angry, Sister Joanna might not have done it on purpose." As expected, Ethan immediately frowned and looked at me with annoyance in his eyes. "Joanna, have you had enough? Apologize to Luna." Upon hearing this, Sophie, who had been forbearing, completely exploded. "Ethan, are you blind?" She rushed forward, pushed Luna away, pointed at her and yelled, "You were the one who bumped into me and spilled the wine, and you're still pretending to be innocent and framing Joanna. Do you have any shame?" Luna staggered after being pushed, and immediately fell weakly towards Ethan, tears in her eyes. "Ethan, I didn't." "Miss Sophie. You're still pretending." Sophie didn't give her a chance to continue her performance. She raised her hand and slapped Luna in the face. The whole corner fell silent instantly. Everyone was stunned. Luna covered her face and looked at Sophie in disbelief. Ethan was also stunned, and then he flew into a rage. "Sophie! How dare you hit her?" Ethan stepped forward and pushed Sophie hard, protecting Luna behind him. "Sophie!" I screamed and tried to help her, but it was too late. Sophie was pushed so hard that she lost her balance and screamed and bumped into the decorative corner next to her. Ugh. Sophie groaned in pain, her face turned pale in an instant, and cold sweat seeped out of her forehead. Sophie. How are you? I quickly helped her up, but saw bright red blood flowing down her skirt. My heart sank. Sophie is pregnant. She's just 3 months pregnant and hasn't had time to tell anyone yet. Blood, bleeding. Sophie looked at the blood between her legs, her eyes filled with fear and despair. She held my hand tightly. Joanna, my child, my child. The people around also noticed something was wrong, and exclamations came one after another. Ethan was also stunned by this sudden change. Looking at the blood on the ground, his face turned pale. It's not me. I didn't mean to. He muttered to himself, trying to explain. Luna was so scared that she hid behind him, not daring to make a sound. I raised my head suddenly, staring at him with my red eyes. Sophie was pushed down by Ethan because she was trying to protect me. The child in her belly, the child she and Nathan had been waiting for so long. An indescribable guilt and anger surged in my chest like magma. Ethan. I heard myself speak hoarsely. If anything happens to Sophie and her child, I, Joanna, swear to God, I will make you and Luna pay with blood. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Sophie was urgently put on a stretcher. Nathan also received the news and rushed over like crazy. When he saw his wife on the stretcher with a pale face and blood on her lower body, his eyes turned red and he almost rushed over to tear Ethan apart. Ethan. Fuck your mother. Nathan was held tightly like an angry lion. Flashes kept flashing and reporters swarmed around like flies. The scene was in chaos. I followed the ambulance to the hospital and waited outside the emergency room. Nathan paced anxiously outside the emergency room. The child was eventually lost. Nathan slammed his fist on the wall and his eyes shot like ice knives at Ethan, who followed and tried to explain. Ethan. I don't care what's going on between you and that woman of yours. Today, you killed my child and hurt my wife, Nathan. He approached Ethan step by step, and his strong aura made Ethan almost unable to breathe. Nathan spoke in a low voice, enunciating each word. I've made note of this. The Chin family, and you, Ethan, be prepared to bear the wrath of the Gu family. After saying this, he stopped looking at Ethan and the trembling Luna, turned back to the ward, and held Sophie's hand tightly. I knew that Nathan was not just talking. As I looked at my best friend who had lost her child on the hospital bed, the last bit of hesitation and concern I had about Ethan disappeared completely. After Nathan made those harsh words that day, the Gu group immediately announced the termination of all cooperation with the Chin group and mobilized all its resources to start attacking Chin in business. I had already informed my brother and fully cooperated with the Gu family to use the Jiang family's connections in the political and business circles to put pressure on the Chin family. For a time, the Chin group fell into an unprecedented crisis. The stock price plummeted, the cooperation was interrupted, and the negative news was overwhelming. Ethan was in a state of anxiety all day long. However, Luna, the instigator of all this, seemed to have disappeared into hiding. I stayed with Sophie in the hospital for a few days. Seeing her become increasingly haggard, and seeing Nathan struggling to handle the affairs of the company and the family, the guilt and anger in my heart grew stronger and stronger. It wasn't until I got the information about Luna's whereabouts after returning to China from the private detective that I finally breathed a sigh of relief. At night, I exchanged places with Nathan and returned to the deserted villa. As expected, Ethan was there too. He was sitting on the sofa in the living room, the ashtray in front of him full of cigarette butts, his face showing undisguised fatigue and irritability. Seeing me coming back, he raised his scarlet eyes and spoke in a tone full of hostility. You still remember to come back? Was it you who instigated the Gu family? Joanna, do you really want to see me die? I looked at his face and found it ridiculous. Ethan, you really disgust me. Disgusting? He seemed to have heard a big joke, and suddenly stood up and stretched out his hand to pinch my chin. Joanna, don't forget who was the one who insisted on marrying me in the first place. If it weren't for your Jiang family, I would have been with Luna a long time ago. You've occupied her position for so many years, and now you want to destroy me? His words struck my ears as clearly as thunder. It turned out that in his heart, I had always been a vicious woman who had taken over his position and separated him and Luna. When my dad found out about his dirty deeds with Luna, he was so angry that he wanted to cancel the engagement. It was Mr. Chen who came to the house in person and repeatedly promised to deal with it. Not long after, the Jiang family was uprooted for being involved in organized crime, and Luna was quickly sent abroad. Half a month later, Ethan's parents came to my house with 5% of Chen's shares to ask for marriage. My father wanted me to refuse the marriage proposal, but I agreed because of the ridiculous old feelings. After 3 years of marriage, all my efforts and forbearance were not as important to him as a bitch. I laughed in anger, suddenly broke free from his grip, and slapped him hard in the face. Pa! Ethan was stunned and let go of his hand and looked at me blankly. This slap is for Sophie. Joanna! You dare to hit me? He looked at me with a mad and violent look in his eyes. He kicked me to the ground, leaned over and grabbed my neck, growling ferociously. Do you think I dare not touch you? Sophie's child is gone, she deserves it. Who told her to be so arrogant and get involved in our affairs? My eyes widened, I couldn't believe my ears. How could this man say such heartless words? I struggled to break free from him and stood up, with a smile on my face but cold eyes. Ethan, what did you say? Say it again. He was frightened by my gaze, took a half step back, and then became angry. I said she deserved it. It's good that the child is gone. It won't be a hindrance. Very good. I nodded, turned around, took out the live broadcast equipment that had been turned on a long time ago from the display cabinet next to me, and pointed the camera at him. Ethan's pupils suddenly contracted. He looked at the scrolling comments and the rising number of viewers on my phone screen, and his face turned pale instantly. What did you do? I smiled more innocently, nothing, just live streaming your heroism. Joanna. You lunatic. Turn it off. Turn it off now. Ethan rushed over to grab the phone. I took a step back and began to narrate word by word to the camera. Hello everyone, I'm Joanna, my husband, Ethan, the president of Zhang's group, just attacked me because I refused to forgive him for defending his mistress Luna and the miscarriage he caused to my good friend Sophie. I lifted my hair to reveal the bloody wound from hitting the floor. He also said that Sophie deserved to have the miscarriage, and that it was good that she didn't have the baby, so that she wouldn't be a hindrance. You're talking nonsense. I didn't. Joanna, you're slandering me. Ethan denied it with all his might, but his panic and fear had already been exposed through the camera. I looked at him coldly, then thought of something and raised the corner of my mouth sarcastically. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that Miss Luna, whom Ethan protects so much, seems to be pregnant. The barrage of comments went crazy in an instant. Ethan collapsed against the wall, his lips trembling and unable to speak. He probably never thought that I would expose his ugliest side to the sun in this way. Joanna, you are so cruel. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. I pulled the corner of my mouth. No match for you. I ignored him and calmly announced to the camera, everyone, I'm sorry to let you see such an unbearable scene. My marriage with Mr. Ethan ends here. I will leave the subsequent divorce matters to my lawyer. Thank you for your attention. After turning off the live broadcast, I strode out of the villa. Ethan was yelling something behind me, but I pretended not to hear it. I walked to the door and called my brother Ace. Brother, get ready. I said calmly, Chen's stock price is not far from hitting bottom. Got it. Ace chuckled and sighed. My sister has grown up, but my brother is not happy. I felt bitter and tears fell silently. Only my brother knew that the first person I liked was Ethan. The live broadcast incident continued to ferment. The next day, the stock price of Chen Group fell to the limit at the opening. Billions of dollars evaporated in the blink of an eye. the hotline and special line were bombarded with calls. Some shareholders even demanded an emergency board meeting to remove Ethan from his position as president. Ethan's dad was so angry that he almost had a heart attack, and Ethan's mom called me repeatedly to beg me to consider the overall situation. Consider the overall situation? Why didn't they consider the overall situation when Ethan brought Luna home? After all, it was all their own fault. I smiled. The best part is yet to come. I asked a lawyer to file for divorce and froze some of Ethan's assets. The evidence of cheating and domestic violence was irrefutable, and the division of assets was in my favor, so the Chin family naturally refused to let go. The divorce lawsuit reached a deadlock. The Chin family used all their connections to delay the case and tried their best to restore the Chin family's reputation. Ethan also changed his previous arrogance and stood haggardly at the door of the Jiang family villa, speaking in a humble tone. "Joanna, I was wrong. I will take care of Luna's situation. I will also have her abort the child. As long as you come back, we can start over." I felt sick when I heard him talk about aborting the child so easily. This man is really selfish to the core. For his own benefit, he can sacrifice anyone without hesitation, including Bai Yuiguang, whom he once deeply loved, and even his unborn child. "No need," I said in a cold tone. "I have already signed the divorce agreement, and the property division will be based on the plan I proposed. If you sign, we can part ways amicably. Otherwise, you will only lose more." The Chin family didn't believe I was so heartless, and they still fantasized about delaying it, and everything would be the same after the storm. I looked at the DNA test report of Luna's baby and Ethan in my hand and smiled. In order to restore their reputation, the Jiang family decided to hold a grand business reception at the weekend. Celebrities and partners from all walks of life were invited to show that the Jiang group is still solid and to try to repair Ethan's damaged reputation. My brother and I also attended the banquet. As soon as we entered the banquet hall, we were met with a lot of surprised, curious, and sympathetic looks. Ethan's eyes lit up when he saw me, and he came up to hold my hand, but I dodged him. His smile froze, and then he led my brother and me to the main table. When Ethan's parents saw us, they looked a little uncomfortable, but they immediately smiled and pulled me to their side. I didn't refuse, and listened to the ladies' gossip with a smile on my face. Until my phone vibrated slightly, I glanced at the message, stood up and left. A moment later, I walked in from the side employee passage with Luna. The pride in her eyes was gone, and she stroked her 5-month-old belly and looked at me with hatred. "Joanna, you'd better keep your word." I glanced at her and said lightly, "You have no right to ask me." Walking to the main table with Luna, the banquet suddenly became quiet for a moment. After a brief silence, there was a greater commotion. "Joanna, what are you doing?" Ethan's mother looked at me nervously. Ethan's father also looked gloomy. Soon Ethan came over after hearing the news, and when he saw Luna standing behind me pitifully with a bulging belly, his face changed drastically and he shouted, "Joanna! What are you going to do to Luna?" I looked at him with a smile. What can I do to her? It was really ridiculous to see how affectionate he was. A few days ago, he vowed to make Luna abort the baby, so why is he pretending to be a romantic now? He stepped forward, protecting Luna behind him, with a fierce look in his eyes. "Joanna! I warn you, don't hurt Luna." The fierce light in his eyes was only directed at me. The sneer on my lips deepened. At this moment, Luna suddenly broke free from Ethan's hand. With a thump, he knelt straight down in front of Ethan and me. The whole place was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Luna raised her tearful face and grabbed Ethan's trouser legs and cried bitterly. "Ethan! I beg you. Please divorce Miss Joanna. I can't live without you. I really can't live without you. I know I shouldn't have ruined your marriage, and I know I'm sorry, Miss Joanna. But I really love you so much. I can't lose you." She turned to me and was about to kowtow. "Please, Miss Joanna, please help us. I kowtow to you." The entire banquet hall was in an uproar. Everyone was stunned by the sudden bloody drama. Ethan was caught off guard by Luna's action. His face turned pale. He wanted to pull but didn't dare to. He froze in place, enduring gazes from all directions. The Chin family was humiliated by the mistress in public. Ethan's parents were so angry that they were shaking all over and their faces turned black. I walked forward slowly. Looking at Luna, who was crying her heart out, I said with just the right amount of helplessness. "Ms. Luna, why are you doing this? Since you and Ethan are so in love, why should I be the bad guy?" I turned to Ethan, whose face was extremely ugly, and said calmly, "Ethan, since Miss Luna has said so much, in front of so many people, you should also give a clear attitude, right?" I paused and added meaningfully, "After all, Ms. Luna is in a special situation right now, and can't stand too much stimulation. What do you think?" Ethan's expression changed again and again. He knew that if he didn't go down the paved steps today, a bigger scandal and immeasurable consequences would be waiting for him. Finally, he closed his eyes and squeezed out a few words from between his teeth, "Okay. I agree to divorce." As soon as these words came out, there was another commotion in the banquet hall. Luna stopped crying, a trace of humiliation and relief flashed in her eyes. And I looked at Ethan's face full of reluctance and humiliation, and I felt only cold satisfaction in my heart. I did not give them any chance to regret or delay. The next morning, my legal team showed up at Ethan's office with a divorce agreement that had been prepared and was extremely favorable to me. I heard that when Ethan signed the contract, his expression was as if he had eaten shit. I couldn't help but shake my head. This is just the beginning. Afterwards, the intimate photos of Luna and Tony and the DNA report that was known to everyone were accurately delivered to Zhang's directors and financial reporters through anonymous emails and accidentally leaked documents. The next day, just before Chen convened the board meeting, articles and posts with titles such as "Chen's president is cuckolded," "The father of Luna's fetus is suspected to be Chen's competitor," and "Chen Group may be involved in a commercial espionage scandal," popped up in major financial media and social platforms. This time, the board of directors kicked Ethan out without hesitation. The business empire built by Mr. Chen changed hands. Chen was divided up by various forces and no longer had the glory of the past. "You mean Ethan's father?" Guess why Mr. Chen handed Chen's to Ethan? Having lost his power, status, wealth, and fame, Ethan seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. Until this moment, he remembered me and everything that my Jiang family had brought him. He was like a lost dog and found the hotel where I was staying temporarily. That day, I had just finished a cross-border video conference and was about to go see Sophie when he stopped me in the hotel lobby. He looked haggard and disheveled, his former high spirits were gone, and his eyes were bloodshot. I looked at him calmly, as if I were looking at a stranger. "Joanna, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." He suddenly knelt down in front of me, attracting the attention of everyone in the hall. "Will you forgive me? Please, for the sake of our past relationship, for the sake of our past." His voice was hoarse, and he grabbed my trouser leg. "Help me. I know you are capable. As long as you help me this time, I will agree to anything you want. Can we remarry? I will treat you well in the future, and we." The gazes from all around made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I didn't walk away immediately. I just looked down at the man kneeling in front of me, looking at his humble appearance, without a trace of emotion in my eyes. "Help you?" I sneered. "Ethan, look at you now, what else can I help you with?" His face turned pale instantly, and he wanted to say something else. I said word by word, too late, shattering his last delusion. I pulled out the trouser leg that he was holding, looked into his desperate eyes, and added the final blow: "Just struggle and rot slowly in the quagmire that you dug with your own hands." After saying that, I didn't even look at him again, turned around, and walked straight to the door. I heard that he later sought help from others to make a comeback, but without the support of the Jiang family, and with uncles and aunts eyeing him covetously. The old foxes in the business world are all cunning, so who could let him get any benefits? In the end, he was reported for illegal fundraising and was put in jail with free food and shelter. As for Luna, her fate was even more miserable. After the bastard incident was exposed, Ethan exploded on the spot and angrily questioned her. Luna simply laid her cards on the table and told the whole story of how the Jiang family was plotted against by Old Man Chen and how she teamed up with Tony to get revenge. I had noticed something was wrong with the Zhou family, and I had found out much more than Ethan, the idiot. In the end, the two of them had a complete falling out, and Luna was chased and beaten by Ethan, and she fell down the stairs and lost her child. Tony, the father of the child, was furious when he realized that he was almost dragged into trouble by Luna. Once the Zhou family made a move, Luna was completely helpless and left with a lot of debts. She was forced to leave Jiangqing in disgrace before she even had her confinement period. I heard that later on, when she was wandering in another place, she was ambushed by some rich man's ex-wife and her men, who cut her face several times, completely disfiguring her. There was no news of her after that. When I got out of the house and got in the car, Zach came close to me and smiled in my ear. "Sister Joanna, you are so heartless." I glanced at him with a half-smile. Zach's peach-shaped eyes flashed with panic. He suddenly tightened his arms around my shoulders, buried his face in the crook of my neck, and spoke in a muffled voice. He tightened his hand on my shoulder, and then buried his head in the crook of my neck. "I was wrong, Sister Joanna. You'd better be more ruthless." I kept smiling and looked out the window. The street scene flashed by quickly, and my heart was calm. When we were almost at Gu's house, Zach whispered in my ear. "Sister Joanna, can I ask for a status?" I lowered my head and replied to the message without even raising my eyelids. "You know, this is impossible." He was silent for a while, then sighed softly, "I know." The car stopped outside the Gu family villa, and Zach didn't get out of the car. I went in with the supplements. 6 months later, Sophie was pregnant again, and Nathan treated her like a pearl in his eye. She was in much better spirits, and she was complaining angrily that Nathan treated her like a pig. Seeing her lively appearance, my tense heartstrings finally relaxed. Fortunately, they are all fine.